Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
We're going to talk now to Matthew Dickerson. He's our Tech Talk fellow, and he's got some pretty interesting stories to tell you about this morning. G'day, Matthew.
Look, I just think it's fascinating, all those discussions about the Isle of Wight. Of course, the Isle of Wight played a major role in World War II with the development of radar technology. So There is a connection to technology there too, Pav.
Nice work, Matthew. Well done. I like it. Look, there's some really interesting stories in amongst you, a lot that we've seen. The one I want to start with is the notion of healing paint. And it's just to a lot of people who drive cars and trucks, the fact that one day the paint that covers their car may actually self-heal. Can you explain how that works?
Well, it's not actually the paint itself. There's a covering that you can put on the paint. There's a popular thing that people are doing these days with plastic film that they put typically on the front of their cars, but sometimes their entire car. And it's basically, you go to a sign writer and get signs made up. It's the same sort of film they use for that, but it's just transparent, so it's clear. And you can remember back in the old days when those car bras were all the go. Remember those big black car bras? So they'd put those across the front of a car. They were big, black, plastic, ugly things. And these engineers would spend countless hours getting the aerodynamics of a car absolutely perfect and making it slip through the air as easily as possible. And then people bought those cars and put this big hunk of ugly plastic on the front and affected the aerodynamics and affected the look of it. This is much better than that. It's a clear plastic film. But the good part about it is that it is self-healing. So that's the incredible part. They use a particular type of plastic. They've got incredibly thin layers. So each layer of this plastic in the actual plastic itself is around 0.0254 millimetres. So they're incredibly thin. And those layers slide across each other. And if you get stone chips, or even if you wash it too vigorously and get a few scratches in it, they actually self-heal with heat. So you could put a hairdryer on it, or you could put hot water, but just putting it in the sun is enough for those layers of plastic to actually just move across each other and fix any little indentations or scratches you might have. So it's a modern way to try and keep that car looking perfect.
What about if you've actually scratched the paint underneath the coating?
Yeah, if it goes that far, obviously that's still going to be a bad thing. But a lot of the things you find when you're looking at the front of your car, you've got bugs all over the front of it. If you've been driving out at night time perhaps, or on country roads, you'll get little stone chips. Ones you don't even realise there are stones flying up and hitting the front of your car. They're only very small, but you get that front of the car. You typically notice it, Pav, when you're about to sell your car and you get up close and wash it and you go, oh, look at all those little scratches. The great part about this, and I've actually used some of these plastics, not this self-healing one yet, but I've used some of these plastics before, and you literally peel the front off and you look, wow, the front of the car looks absolutely perfect. So most of the things that hit the front of your car are not hard enough or large enough to go through the plastic that might be on there and affect the paint underneath. Of course, you still can get that, but most of them are things that you might cause when you're cleaning it, or just bugs and stones that hit the front of the car.
Well, very interesting to see how that one works out. I think they're not going to be replacing the panel beaters in a big hurry, but very interesting technology.
Yeah, you're right. It's not going to replace panel beaters that are replacing car parts or fixing dents and that type of thing, but it certainly will make the second-hand car market better because you'll see better fronts of cars, so the cars look in better condition.
Speaking of cars, and it's often been stated that people think that Australia's a bit of a dumping ground for electric combustion engine vehicles, second-hand cars, if you like. There's a great, interesting race that's going to be taking place in Portugal soon. It's the Battle of Technologies, and it's a rather big organisation, a lot of money behind it, and they're going to stage a race that is called. It's going to be EVs versus combustion engine hybrids. It's called the Race of Technology, or the Battle of Technologies. What's behind that one, Matthew?
It's the World Rallycross Championship, so this is an ongoing series, and this race is actually just finished in Portugal. So it's the notes I've got a few there. Sorry, Pav, a few days out of date.
Good on you.
Yeah, sorry about that. But effectively, Rallycross is a fascinating racing series, which has got a bit of off-road, a bit of bitumen, a concept where they've got different spots you can go around a track, so you've got kind of different ways you can get around the track. And in the old days when you watched rallies, you'd stand on a desert area, a forest area, and you'd see a car come past every few minutes or so, and you'd see a flash go past, and that was about it. And then you'd go somewhere else on the track. So it was a beginning to end track, whereas they didn't find that was great for spectators. So Rallycross Championships have been going for a few years now, but in the past they've been internal combustion engines. They tried some EVs and they thought they might turn it on an EV series, but they've actually got more interest now on having it as an EV versus an ICEV, internal combustion engine vehicle race. So they've basically got the choice for the teams to choose an EV or choose internal combustion. And at the moment, the field's about 50-50. The EVs have got an advantage because their acceleration is incredible. They've got all that torque available from zero, so they get really fast off the line. They're great down the straights, but they're about 160 kilograms heavier than the internal combustion engine vehicle. So when they're cornering around some of the more interesting parts of the track, on the dirt parts of the track, for example, the internal combustion engine vehicles have a slight advantage. So it really just comes down to the drivers and maybe the different tracks they might be on. So it's a fascinating process of looking at internal combustion versus EVs.
I thought EVs were lighter than internal combustion engine vehicles.
Well, the battery's the problem. So you're spot on in terms of the motor itself, definitely lighter. But then when you put the battery in, and the battery's great because it's good for handling because it keeps the centre of gravity down very low. They put the batteries down at the very base of the car. But when you put enough batteries on there, then you get to the stage where they're a bit heavier. And they needed to have some way of evening it up as well, so they wanted to make it a bit more interesting. So I watched some of the racing, and off the line, the EVs just kill the internal combustion cars. There's no contest there. But when they start getting to the trickier parts of the track, the internal combustion engine vehicles come back, and so it's actually quite a good contest. But what I love about it is that many people have this image still, Pav, even now, of an electric vehicle being a bit like a golf buggy, where they've driven on a golf buggy, it was electric, and it was governed to maybe 12 kilometres an hour, and so people think they're a bit stodgy and a bit slow. When they see them racing in this sort of series, they go, wow, these cars really can compete, and they have got some distinct advantages over internal combustion engine vehicles. You've got things like Formula E, of course, which are just electric vehicles competing, so they don't compete against Formula One cars, but this is kind of what they've done with Rallycross. They've said, let's take the best of the EV and the best of the internal combustion and put them together in one race and stand back.
Formula E, was it like Formula One cars that are electric?
Oh, they're fascinating. Actually, it's worth watching because the first time I showed my son, he thought he was watching a Mario Kart race because at certain parts of the track, each track they have laid out, there's a spot they'll be able to move over and run over a part of the track, which gives them a certain boost for about, say, 2 minutes. So strategically, you're working out when you might use that. Are you stuck behind another car? Can you use this boost to get past them? Do you do it when you're in the lead to get a bit further away? Do you wait to the end of the race? So they literally have to move across on one corner of the track and run over a certain part of the track to activate their boost. And again, that was the first thing my son thought of was Mario Brothers racing on a game and look at that. But no, they're quite fast. And again, it's one of those things with EVs that they've got all this torque available. They're very fast. The battery life, obviously the race isn't as long as the Formula One race because the battery life kills you at the high performance.
Huh? That fascinating stuff. I'm looking at some pictures. They just look like Formula One cars.
Yeah, the Formula One, the very look of that is very like Formula One, and they've had some ex-Formula One drivers that have been driving in them. So it's getting bigger at the moment. They're not racing on the same tracks as Formula One tracks, so there might be some licensing arrangement there. I'm not sure exactly why. But yeah, it's actually quite fascinating to watch. The sound of it's the interesting part. There's not the sound. I've been to Formula One races in Australia and overseas, and you wear your earplugs as you walk around. It's deafening there. It kind of adds to the energy with all that noise, whereas Formula One cars, you just get the little whir of the motors.
The e-cars, there you go. Yeah, I'm sure that, look, if they eventually come in, it'd be of a great relief to anybody who lives near a Grand Prix track, I would have thought. Yes, there's a whole circuit for Formula E. I didn't know anything about this.
Yeah, no. And there's also Moto E in the GP. So you've got Moto GP and you've also got Moto E.
All right. Well, it'd be very interesting to see one day, and it'll probably happen, won't it, that the Formula E and the Formula One will fire off against each other.
Yeah, and it's only a matter of just whatever specifications they give the vehicles to say how they can compete. And that's what they've done with the Rallycross, is they've been very specific about what the limits are, because if you just said no limits, then you can just keep putting bigger engines in them or bigger electric motors. So you've obviously got to have some limits. At the moment, the Formula One cars are faster than Formula E, but that's only to do with the specifications in both series. Yeah. The great part about racing, of course, Pav, is that you get development. When you say there's a trophy at the end of it, then companies, organisations make things better, and so they're getting better development out of batteries, better development out of motors by having these involved in racing.
Yeah, fascinating stuff, all about that. Formula E, didn't know anything about it. Look, if you want to join us this morning, any questions about technology, you can give us a ring on that, 1300 800 222. If you've got any new gadgets that you've heard about, love to hear from you as well, 1300 800 222, the text number, 0437 774 774. We're talking to Matthew Dickerson this morning, our tech guru.
It's the most magical time of the year, right? Final season. Get your footy finals live and ad-free on the ABC Listen app.
Unbelievable. AFL or NRL, whatever your code, we've got you covered.
Every goal, try, mark and tackle, called by ABC Sport's expert commentary team.
And there's even more to score with our in-depth daily podcasts.
A wonderful goal! He bounces it through.
Hear your footy finals live and ad-free on the ABC Listen app.
We're talking with Matthew Dickerson this morning, tech talk expert or tech expert, and someone who knows a lot about the new things that we're dealing with, the new gadgets that are being issued every day just about. The world is changing quickly, and the new technologies quite incredible that we're discovering as we get along there. Look, a couple of these texts I'll read to you. Matthew says, I'm smiling. This is to do with the covers, the self-healing paint cover. It says, I'm smiling because it sounds like Glad Wrap, says Robin.
Well, you're probably pretty right, actually. It's exactly what you do to your car, put it in Glad Wrap, slightly thicker version of Glad Wrap, a slightly more advanced version, but that's basically what you're doing.
I've got here as well, it may do what old glass does. It thins at the top and thickens at the bottom. Glass is a very interesting property, and I wonder if it is a bit like that, a fluid sort of product, a fluid solid almost.
I actually think that's a myth, Pav. I should look that up for you. But the old myth about glass being a fluid and slowly getting thicker at the bottom over years, I think just goes back to old manufacturing techniques that weren't that accurate. So I'm not an expert on glass, but I think that's one of those common myths that we've held true for a long time but isn't quite true.
All right, well, no worries. We'll check that one out. British-made electric four-wheel drive mountain rescue vehicles. Apparently they're very good, Paul wanted to say. And someone suggested that, what about Bathurst? Perhaps one day there will be a Formula E race there.
Well, on a technicality, Bathurst, I think it was this year, was won by an EV because it finished under a safety car, and the safety car was actually electric. So if you're being pedantic about it, the first car across the finishing line was an EV.
There you go. Yeah, maybe a little bit pedantic there.
Maybe.
Matthew. No worries. Look, let's have a chat to Cameron in Darwin. G'day, Cameron.
G'day, man. How you doing?
Good, thanks. Hi there. What did you want to say?
So, I wanted to know if you've had any new technologies and gadgets and so forth, and to discuss what we're going to do when we run out of coal and oil. And there's a quite ingenuitive Australian lad. He's come up with. He's a bit out there like James Morrison was. He reckons this knowledge was waved on to him from beings from other parts of our solar system. He was visited. He reckons, but it's quite remarkable. He's got an answer for everything.
What's his name?
And his name is Shane Hensby.
Okay.
From
Where's he from?
He's from the southern parts of Australia.
Southern parts of Australia. Look, I know there is someone down Tassie who is nicknamed the Shaman, apparently, who looks at a lot of this sort of stuff. But yeah, a bit spurious. But Matthew, I suppose we could just ask you about alternative technologies. We're hearing a lot that they're developing hydrogen and different things. Where do you think we're going to go with that?
There's a few things there, Pav, and one of the things, obviously, you talk about running out of coal or oil. So I think coal, as we start to diminish our reserves of coal, but also obviously want to do things for the planet, we've obviously got fairly advanced processes in renewables, both wind and solar. Obviously, the federal government's talking about nuclear, which is probably 15, 20 years down the track, but certainly I think we've got some pretty good alternatives there. Running out of oil, well, there's, in terms of internal combustion engine vehicles, we know we've got some pretty good processes there in place with EVs, but I think, as you said, Pav, hydrogen's a really interesting one. EVs are great, electric vehicles are great for driving around a city. You've got a range, typically 500, 600 kilometres of those cars. So they're great for cars that you're driving on those shorter distances. But when you start talking about some of our trucks that go across the nation, some of our heavy haulage, some of our trains, even some of our shipping processes, then hydrogen will be, I think, a really effective process. And basically a hydrogen-powered vehicle, whether it be a truck or a train, etc., is an electric vehicle without needing a big battery, because what you've got is hydrogen, which is converted to electricity to drive electric motors. So the development that's happening with EVs at the moment will still help when we move to hydrogen. And there are some hydrogen cars available now, and I've driven them, and they drive just like an electric vehicle, but instead of having a big battery, they just have hydrogen storage.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Have you seen those ships? They're starting to develop sails, big sails for cargo ships, for big tankers and stuff. And it's a no-brainer, really. They put these big sails up, and if they're going downwind, they're saving themselves a lot of money on fuel.
And that's exactly right, Pav. There's so many things that are happening now, so much development. So the sails, there are ships being retrofitted with those. As you said, that saves fuel. It's not going to replace fuel, but it's going to save fuel. But they're even working on different ways to make hulls slipperier so that they cut through the water easier, so there's less energy being used there. So there are different ways they're working on now. The great part about it is, Pav, we've got a lot of people on this planet and a lot of very clever people, and lots of them are working on solutions, and it's hard to say what the single solution will be because there'll be so many different solutions that are being developed.
Fascinating stuff. Let's have a chat to Andy. G'day, Andy.
Yeah, g'day. When I was researching or looking up a bit of the space program, apparently there's a moon buggy had a silver oxide type battery. Just wondering if I haven't heard really anything much about that type of battery.
Silver oxide battery. Matthew, know anything about those?
Yeah, well, a little bit, but this is one of those fascinating things as well. We thought we had it nailed when we had lead acid batteries, and then someone came along with nickel cadmium, and that's now definitely the way to go. And then someone came along with lithium ion, that's definitely the way to go. We're developing cobalt now, we're developing silver oxide, we're even developing batteries that are actually part of the structure. So carbon fibre batteries where you build a device, a vehicle, for example, and the actual construction of that will be part of the battery. So there are different things we're developing all the time. So when we think we've got it nailed, then people keep developing technology. People are still trying to race for things better. And if you've got kids and you're saying to your kids, what should you go into, then material science is the huge development area because so many different materials are being developed and we're learning so much more. So whether it be in batteries, whether it be in the way you construct different items, whether it be cars or houses, there is a huge range of development in material science happening.
All right. If you're interested in the cricket, I can tell you that there's a rain delay at the moment, so the Aussies might be saved by the weather. That'll be interesting. At the moment, it's 304 Australia made in their 50 overs, and England in reply after 37 overs are 254 for 4. So there you go. Look, there's another very interesting story here that I found, and this is when you talk about there's an app, a debunk bot, I think it's called, that it uses AI to take down conspiracy theories. A fascinating little development, this one.
Now, can I just be pedantic? I know you love my pedanticness, Pav, but I do get frustrated with the fact that we call them conspiracy theories because in the scientific world, you have to have a hypothesis before you get to a theory. And these things that people believe are nowhere near theories, they're hardly even hypotheses. But I've got that off my chest now, so I'm feeling better.
Well done, Matthew.
Thank you.
But for people who are inclined to, indulge in these sorts of theories, this is a pretty interesting thing because I believe they did a survey when they tested the debunk bot out amongst a whole lot of conspiracy theorists, and they had 25% of those people surveyed actually abandoned the conspiracy theories that they had. So that's a pretty effective tool.
It's much better hit rate than I have, Pav, because when I talk to people about some crazy conspiracy theories, it's very difficult to get someone to say, you know what, I'm wrong. That's a really big thing. Remember Fonzie? It was always he couldn't actually say he was wrong. And I think most people are like Fonzie where it's a real struggle to say they're wrong. So to convince someone that their crazy idea that they have is actually incorrect is pretty tough. But what DebunkBot does is exactly that. And I actually tried it. I thought this is interesting. I'll go and say that man didn't land on the moon. And I went through a series of questions and a series of answers, and it actually got to the stage where it was just basically hammering me with cold, hard facts to show that my crazy idea that man didn't land on the moon was actually exactly that, a crazy idea. So you're spot on. They did this process. They created DebunkBot. It's an AI chatbot, and they tested it on a couple of thousand US adults who identify themselves as conspiracy theorists. And they said, right, give us your best one. Give us your best conspiracy theory, the one that you know to be true. And as you said, 25% said at the end of that process, oh, you know what, I'm wrong. Another 20% on top of that said, no, I'm not convinced, but I still think I'm right, but gee, I'm a bit shaky now. So to get almost half of people to start questioning or throw away their whole concept is quite good. And I remember sitting there with a friend one day and they were talking about they didn't believe in climate change. And I was having a coffee with them, picked up my coffee cup and said, I don't believe in gravity. I don't believe in gravity. And I let go of my coffee cup and it hit the plate. And I went, oh, damn, I don't believe in gravity, but it still fell to the ground. What's going on there? So it doesn't matter how much you believe in something sometimes. The fact that you don't believe in it doesn't really matter. It's still going to happen out there. So I think this is a great way to try and get people to say, look, don't believe me. Go and actually get some facts and let's see what happens, because so many people have all these different ideas in their head and they're playing wrong. So this is a great way to give them the facts.
It's a hell of a way to make a point, spilling a hot cup of coffee on your lap there, Matthew, but, you know, I suppose it was effective.
Well, no, he still didn't believe me. So
Okay.
I need a DebunkBot.
Yes, you did too. Really interesting stuff, and how they are able to do that. And I believe they have fact-checked the results of what the DebunkBot spits out, and it's got like a 99.5% accuracy rate.
And one of the things that's a bit scary is that when you've got an AI tool gathering its information from the internet, there is a risk that it's actually gathering some incorrect information. So exactly as you mentioned there, they've gone through and then fact-check all the information that comes back, and it's near enough to 100%, so that it's actually getting that correct information. And that's a real challenge for various AI tools out there, that the chat GPTs of the world, for example. It's gathering information from the internet. So as we know, people can put any crazy concept, idea, theory, hypothesis on the internet. So how does the chatbot, how does an AI tool work out what's correct out there and what's incorrect? And in this case, it's got it pretty well right.
Got an interesting text here that says this year's Verge Expo will showcase nearly 100 organisations applying their innovative technologies and services to address the climate crisis, along with hundreds of innovative startups demonstrating their latest technologies and solutions to accelerate decarbonisation. In the Startup Pavilion, expect to find hands-on demos, product launches and exciting activations that bring climate solutions to life. That's very interesting. The Verge Expo.
It sounds like a good advertisement for one of the many expos around the world, doesn't it? The Verge Expo is one of those. There are so many different technology expos around the world, Pav, and certainly climate change and different solutions to address climate change are part of those. And what I've seen at various expos I've been at around the world is that organisations bring along various products, and it's almost testing the market out. They're showing off something and they're just gauging the reaction, seeing if there's anyone interested in investing maybe, just seeing the interest out there. And you see 100 different ones one year, you come along next year and there'll be maybe 30 or 40 of those that are the same. They might be showing off some slightly later development, and 50 or 60 disappear because people are trying things out and maybe it didn't quite work, or maybe there was something better that came along. But there are definitely people working on a whole range of solutions out there.
Peter's called. G'day, Peter.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Very interesting conversations here today. What I was reading up for, it's just a follow-on from the previous discussion on that vinyl wrap on vehicles to protect the paintwork.
Yep.
I had, from time to time, I've had this ad come up on the internet when I'm doing something else, and it's advertising a polish. And it shows, and you have this little video, and it shows all these scratches on the bumper or panel or whatever, and then you get this magical polish out, and you rub the surface with the polish, and they say it creates this chemical reaction, and it makes the paint bond back together and makes the scratch disappear. And the question mark is that a special polish, or it's a bit of a gag? They've actually got a vinyl treated panel, and they use the polish to heat the panel to cover up the crack. So if you've got a car that doesn't have a vinyl covering, then this polish won't work. But if it's just a normal car, you just buying a polish that technically you're just wasting money because it won't create it. So is there something that does have a chemical reaction, or this is a bit of a ruse?
I don't know of anything off the top of my head, Peter, that it does a chemical reaction with the paint. As far as I would know, without having expertise in this area, the paint is done and dusted, and the way...
That's right, so I would have thought.
Yeah, the way a polish typically works is to get rid of the scratches by getting all the paint around the scratch down to the same level. So you're effectively removing the paint around the area there. So look, again, there are things, I know you might find this hard to believe, there are things on the internet that maybe are advertising that are trying to sell your product rather than basing it on pure science. So that might be one of those. I haven't seen that particular ad myself, but the vinyl film is really just designed to cover up the paint, so you're basically protecting it from having those scratches in the first place.
So I've got a feeling that to create the image, he's actually got a vinyl sealed panel that's been scratched or got marks on it, and that polish is actually creating the heat that enables the vinyl to self-heal, and exactly the vinyl wrap, which you spoke about earlier on with the heat, is what's doing the magical recovery. It's not the polish. So unless you're polishing a panel that's already vinyl wrapped, you're going to have the stuff there, and you'll be rubbing away.
It could be one of these, as seen on TV, Peter. That, like when you see...
The trouble is, there's so many, you don't know what's true and what's not true.
Right. It's like that guy who pulls out the vacuum cleaner and the carpet's looking brand new.
I clicked on one of these ads the other day. It wasn't promoting a product. It was just some amazing incidents, right? I clicked on it, and it basically locked up my whole computer.
You got to watch out.
I couldn't get into my computer. It said, "Contact us. We'll do this, do this, do this, do this. Don't turn your computer off." And I was panicking, and I did the opposite to what they said. I turned the computer off and left it, and then when I went back in, it started working. No, so as soon as I clicked onto it, up came this warning.
Yeah.
And
I'm glad you heeded the warning. Look, Pete, we're actually going to talk about to talk about scammers, computer scammers, and call centres and computer people ringing you, cold calling you. So that we're doing that in a couple of days, Pete. So hopefully you'll be able to listen to that one. Hey, thanks for your call.
Thanks for your help.
Cheers, Taylor. Good morning to JK in Canberra. Thank you. Lovely 12 degrees in Canberra this morning. Thanks. I got a text here from Alistair that says, my chief engineer grandfather made a non-stop delivery voyage from Scotland to Melbourne in 1892 in a little ship called the Tambo. To do this, the holds were filled with coal and the vessel was fitted with sails. Thank you, Alistair. My great-great-grandfather came from Scotland in 1852 and my dad is a chief engineer as well, so there you go. We've got that in common. Hey, look, it's been really interesting talking to you, as it always is, Matthew. Much appreciated.
Always my pleasure, Pav. Thanks for chatting to me.
That's our tech guru, Matthew Dickerson there.